What's up, everybody? My name is Doug, and this is Leaving the Dream. My next guest has an incredible story. I heard about him on TikTok and on YouTube, and as soon as I heard his story, I knew that he was a good fit for the channel. I think you guys are going to love our interview. He talks about his 18-month stint in a federal prison for financial crimes he committed. He talks about what it's like to say goodbye to your family and turn yourself in, how it is to survive in prison, what prison culture is like, what it's like to say goodbye to the friends that you made in prison, and then getting your life started again once you've served your sentence in probation. I think that right now he's doing some pretty good things. He's dedicating his time to helping those that find themselves in a similar predicament that he was in, and he's got some really awesome stories. I think you guys are going to love it. So welcome to the channel, my new friend, Justin Paperny.
Aloha.
Justin, how you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
We're recording. We're hot. We're ready to go.
So you in Hawaii?
I'm in Michigan.
Michigan, nice. That's why the East Coast. I see the 808. You got the East.
That's the Hawaii number. Where are you at?
California, Orange County.
That's where you're from, yeah.
I'm from Los Angeles.
Well, it's nice to meet you. Thanks
too.
for taking the time to hang out.
You're welcome. Did you find me? Was it TikTok or YouTube?
Yeah, I first saw you a few weeks ago on TikTok. I'm stoked that you were willing. So, man, I really appreciate it.
Of course.
This is the first time we met. So all I know from you is your content online, really. You showed up in my algorithm somewhere in my, somehow I'm in crime TikTok and you pop up. I knew I wanted your perspective. So that's why I reached out to you, man. So
well, I'm grateful. Thank you very much. I look forward to doing this with you.
Can you share with us a little background? I mean, who are you? How old are you? You know, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? That kind of stuff.
Sure. So who am I? Justin Matthew Paperny grew up in Los Angeles, specifically Encino, which is a Jewish suburb about 20 minutes outside of Los Angeles. Went to a good prep school, was a baseball player. After graduating high school, I went to USC, where I was a member of the baseball team for 4 years. That journey at USC took us out to Hawaii, where we played, I guess it's the Rainbows. And then we also went to Hilo, because a guy on our team, Sean Milani, was from Hawaii. So we went to his hometown to play the university. That
Shout out
awesome.
Sean Milani.
Sean Milani, yep. Actually, he may have served some time, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Great guy. After graduating SC, built my career as a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, which is now out of business thanks to the mortgage meltdown of 2008, and then UBS. And many years into my career, I focused primarily on managing money for professional athletes. So as a baseball player, kind of understood how baseball players think, the way they act. I related to them, and I would travel to spring training. And in time, we built a book of business that had a lot of high profile athletes like Mike Piazza and Trevor Hoffman and many others. And I can't tell you we were really money managers. We kind of were fundraisers, and we then outsourced the money for other people to manage, so to speak. I was really a relationship builder. Besides managing money for athletes, I executed trades for hedge fund managers. And one specific client who was running a hedge fund, it led to a whole lot of trouble. In some, I learned as the broker that he was raising money and then losing money, raising money and then losing money. Now, it's not illegal to lose money. However, no rational investor would give money to a hedge fund manager if they knew that hedge fund manager had lost every single penny. So our suspicions were confirmed when my team, we actually attended a meeting, and we actually outright heard our client, the hedge fund manager, lied to a prospect that he was trying to get $5 million from. And in that meeting, rather than tell this prospect, don't give him your money, run, he's a fraud, he's a crook, he's a thief, he's going to lose every dollar, we just kept our mouth shut at UBS. Inaction, of course, is also inaction. As a result of staying quiet, that investor gave the $5 million, he lost it. About 3 months after that, people in my client's hedge fund began calling the bank, my broker, sales manager, saying, is our money in good standing? The answer was no. And that's when this investigation began in 2005. Wow. We'll get into some of those details, but ultimately it led to a federal prison term in 2008. And now 14 years later, I'm still teaching and sharing lessons from that experience.
Wow. So you, right when you graduated, you started brokering deals.
When I was a sophomore at USC, I knew as soon as I got to USC that my baseball career would end because the athletes were so talented. So I knew I had to get good grades at USC, and I did. I began to intern at Goldman Sachs in downtown. And once I walked into that Goldman Sachs office and heard the money that was being managed and thrown around, it was very thrilling to me, as is written in my book, Lessons from Prison. It felt like I was playing in front of 20,000 people again, walking around that Goldman Sachs trading floor. So the brokerage business intoxicated me. And I knew that when I graduated, that's something that I wanted to do. I had mentors who were advising me to go get a business degree or an MBA, but I was ready to work and hustle and make money. And I was a little short-sighted thinking, I would argue. But yes, the interning in college paid dividends because I had a number of opportunities when I graduated.
So what are we talking? What kind of money are we talking? Most of the people that follow my channel, they're normal people. They're not trading stocks. They don't even really understand what that life is like. I mean, for
Sure.
someone out of college like you, coming out of a degree, going into trading or brokering deals, what is that like? What kind of money are we talking about? Like, what were people making?
Well, the first year I probably made 40 grand, right? So they pay you $2,000 a month. And then once you get your license, they say, we're going to pay you another $2,000 a month for 6 months. And after 6 months, you're either going to flunk out of the business because you're not generating enough commissions to live.
Okay.
And if you're not, you're going to quit and you're going to go to Schwab and give stock quotes all day to grandparents. This is before the internet where you can get everything on your iPhone. So the first year was in the office at 5 a.m., working and hustling all day, leaving at 10. I built my business. I joke, I built my business by way of cold walking, which is harder than going to federal prison. Cold walking is where you walk unsolicited into a business, try to shake the owner's hand, give them a card, pamphlet, brochure. The goal of walking in is to get permission to call them or meet them again. So I was a very effective cold walker because it was hard to do and nobody else wanted to do it. It's very easy to cold call someone you don't know. They just hang up on you, you move. But I knew people respond differently if you see them face to face. Studies suggest it. You get in front of someone and you're respectful and polite and ambitious and smart and articulate, they're going to respond, and many did. So while I made 40,000 the first year, it grew quickly because within 2 years it was 300,000, and within 4 years it was 500,000. And then in time we accepted a $1 million bonus to move our book of business from Bear Stearns to UBS. So it was a lot of money. And it was intoxicating. It's easy to begin living above your means to impress people. You think you need to acquire certain things if you're making that sort of money. We're taught if you're going to ask people who are multimillionaires for their money, you need to look like you're a millionaire. So it's the car, it's the house, it's the Rolexes. And while I was accumulating these things, I wasn't cheating, right? I did it the right way. I hustled, I worked, I did right by my clients. I didn't look to generate a trade simply for a commission. I did it the right way. I worked very hard, and we had hundreds of clients and we're growing our book of business. But to the idea of money, I placed value in it, in the security that came with it, and the things that I could purchase with it, so to speak. And in time, of course, by cheating, I lost everything, and I was forced to rebuild from scratch. And I presume we'll get into that.
Is that a common thing in this industry? Share with me, like, when's the first time you broke the law? Is there a culture of little rules getting broken early? I mean, is it something to do?
So the partnerships are very difficult. I always avoided partnerships because I felt like just many of them don't work. Fight over money, appreciation, who's working harder, pay structure. And when I was at Bear Stearns, to your question, when I broke the law for the first time, I had a partnership agreement where I would get 25% of the product commissions. My senior partner would get 75%. And he was in the business 7 years before me. So he was older, had more money, bigger book of business. Well, after we merged our book of business, I brought in a client that was doing $100,000 a month in production every single month, one client. So I did what any of your viewers should do, and they want a raise. You don't ask for a raise because you want it or you need it. It's because you've earned it. So I went into my partner's office one day and asked for a raise based on the production. He kind of laughed at me, threw me out, said, "You're at this firm because of me. You wouldn't have closed that client because of me. I'm not giving you a raise," and kind of threw me out of his office. And I felt pressure to be told thank you, to be recognized, to get a raise, pressure for working from 5 to 10 o'clock at night while he got in at 9 and would go golf at 2 o'clock. I began to get really angry. Then I began to rationalize this unfairness, that it's a sickening industry. He's out for himself. He's never going to appreciate my efforts. And then to your question of the first time I cheated or broke the law, I seized an opportunity. And anyone watching, you can never get into trouble unless you seize a criminal opportunity. You're going to face pressures in life. You're going to rationalize them. but you can't get into trouble unless you seize an opportunity. And I seized an opportunity when a client called in to do a trade and the commission was $1,000. Well, under our partnership structure, I was only due to get 25%. My senior partner would get 75%. I found a glitch in the system that allowed me to keep the whole $1,000 commission, or 100%. In my mind, I didn't think I was taking anything to which I wasn't entitled. I generated the production. He wouldn't give me a raise. That really helped put me on a really bad path to thinking I was above the law, and convincing myself that I felt that if I was wronged, I was going to take matters into my own hands.
How young were you when you started there?
So I was the youngest broker Bear Stearns had hired in that Los Angeles office. I was 25. I went there. I just turned 26, actually, June 16, 2001. Wow.
The thing that sent you to prison, when you mentioned you had a client that had a hedge fund, the $5 million hedge fund, that story. Why is that illegal, what you did?
So there's without getting into all of the nuances and details, there's something really called willful blindness. It's an actual crime where you turn the other way with wrongdoing. There's fraud or treachery taking place, and you deliberately act as if you don't see it. Now, someone may be wondering and thinking, well, that happens all the time. I maybe see something happen and I turn away. Okay. The difference is my company was earning $100,000 a month. So when I hear a prospect being lied to by my client, the hedge fund manager, and I know by keeping my mouth shut that he's going to give the 5 million, I essentially have endorsed him. I've essentially said, yeah, give this dude your money, when I should have said, run, don't give him your money. We should have fired this client years earlier, but we had grown addicted to the commissions. So it's a crime when I willfully turn the other way from a crime. I willfully chose to ignore my client, the hedge fund manager, lying to someone, and I benefited because of the significant commissions.
I see.
In turn, once I got into trouble, I did what so many white collar defendants do. I made matters worse. I lied to my lawyer. I lied to the FBI. I was afraid to come clean. I didn't want to be judged negatively. So my post-offense conduct, what I did after getting caught, was tragic. It was awful. So I tried to obstruct the investigation by lying to the government. So rather than accepting responsibility and saying I did it, I turned the other way for money, which could potentially have kept me out of prison. I chose to double down and make things worse.
Well, how did you get caught?
So like so many people do. So an investigation began in December 2004. And investors of my client's hedge fund began calling UBS to confirm if their money was in good standing. It was not. It launched an investigation. From there, they went, I believe, and arrested my eventual co-defendant, my client, the hedge fund manager. And within minutes, he said, I'll cooperate, I'll help. Because of course, cooperators can get what's called a Rule 35, which is, can get a coveted, a letter from cooperation letter from the government. And that can get them a significantly shorter, a 5K1 letter, a significantly shorter prison term. So he cooperated. While he was beginning to cooperate, I was feigning ignorance, blaming others, saying I didn't do anything wrong. He managed the money, not me. The trades were unsolicited. I didn't recommend the trades. They were his clients. So I was delusional. So he began to cooperate. And then when the FBI showed up at my home, I lied to them. And for the next year, my client, the hedge fund manager, helped the government build a case that was fit with his narrative, right? He was going to essentially say, well, Justin encouraged me to do this. And these guys, he was spinning a narrative to try to keep himself out of prison because he's married with 4 daughters. So that's how the investigation began. And the funny thing with the tragic thing with white collar crime is how long it takes to play out. And from the day that the FBI showed up at my home, nothing happened for a year. In fact, I thought they had forgotten about me. I'm like, oh, I got away with it. I'm good. I have nothing to worry about. But of course, investigations take some time.
And I've heard that before. And that's why my next question was, how did you find out you were in trouble? What was the moment?
So I can tell you, so April 28th, 2009, 1 year to the day after the FBI showed up at my home, I read a press release in the Los Angeles Times stating that my client, the hedge fund manager, had agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy fraud. And in that LA Times article, it mentioned there was an unindicted or unnamed co-conspirator, me, that helped facilitate the fraud, that I gave credence to his hedge fund that he hadn't earned. In other words, nobody would give that guy money if they knew who he was. By attending a meeting and being a UBS broker, I gave his prospects and clients the warm and fuzzies that he's a good dude. Credibility that he had not earned because he lost every penny. From there, I called a lawyer. Hey, remember me? We spoke a year ago. Yeah. Am I the unnamed co-conspirator? Of course you are, Justin. You didn't tell us the truth. You didn't tell the government the truth. You're going to go to jail for 5 years. How long is he going to go? What, 20 years? No, Justin, this is a warped criminal justice system. Even though he was the orchestrator and your client perpetuated this fraud before you ever began working with him, because he has cooperated and the government thinks he's telling the truth, he's looking to get a shorter sentence than you. You should not have lied and made matters worse. So that was in April 2000, good God, 2006. And then I just told my lawyer, try to cut the best deal possible. That took about 6 months and a couple $100,000 in legal fees later. And reluctantly, February 2007, I signed an agreement to plead guilty to one kind of conspiracy to commit fraud with a cap of 60 months in prison. And my lawyer told me, this could have been handled differently, probably no prosecution or probation, but by lying and blaming and excusing others, you're going to probably get the 60 months.
It's heartbreaking to hear that. I can only imagine. Right now in our Patreon, we're going through, there's a very, very high profile, and I promise you will see a movie about it. The police chief in Honolulu, who was married to the prosecuting attorney of Honolulu, conspired to frame somebody, got caught. This week, the prosecuting attorney was arrested. This happened years ago. We're talking 2013, 2014.
Yep.
Police chief is in prison for years. His wife is in prison for years. The new prosecuting attorney is in prison. He was her boss. He just got arrested last week. I mean, it's going to be a huge movie. It's tied to murder, and it's tied to organized crime and kidnapping and extortion. I mean, it's going to be massive. And right now, my Patreon is going through the book that was written about this conspiracy. It's called The Mailbox Conspiracy. It's all about framing a guy for stealing a mailbox who she was involved in a civil litigation with over some money, over one of their relatives who had some money. This guy was being framed, didn't do anything wrong. Man, for you to have maybe not gotten any time and then now realize that you're going to do 5 years. I was the one that started it.
I had exposure up to 5 years. That's right. And look, when you don't know anyone that's gone through the system and all you see is prison sensationalized on television, you're scared about what the experience is like. And further, if you've gotten away with things or you think you're smarter than everybody else, you just figure you can get away with it again. And what our team tries to do at White Collar Advice or our nonprofit prison professors is help people understand, like, we can't change the past. Yeah. Few people wake up with intentions to defraud and create victims and destroy their life, but it doesn't mean you have to continue the bad decision-making. So we derive satisfaction, whether it's through White Collar Advice or TikTok or on our website in a number of places of helping people fully embrace the concept of don't make matters worse.
From how long from the time you committed the crime to the time you were investigated for it?
So the investigation started, my goodness, December 15th, 2004, and I didn't go to prison until April 28th, 2008. So it was a good 3.5 years. I got some breaks that led to a sentence of only 18 months in federal prison, and some people knock that I only served 18 months in federal prison, though I'll tell you, the easiest part was the time in federal prison because it's just clearly defined with a beginning and an end. It was a minimum security camp after all. The hardest part was that 3+ years before going in, the wondering, the waiting, the anxiety, the stress. What will I do? How will I make money? Where I have reputation, my career, my family. That was the hardest part. And then of course, coming home with, having lost everything and a damaged reputation because of my own doing, that too is hard work. So the investigation was a good 3.5 years of misery, and I responded terribly to it.
So you committed the crime when?
The crime late 2004 to 2005, a year.
And then 2005 is when the investigation started.
Yeah, December 15th, 2004. And then I signed my plea agreement February 2007. I was sentenced
wow.
February 2008. Then I went to prison April 2008.
What was the arrest? When did you get actually arrested?
February 2007.
February 2007. So we're talking 3 years or 2.5 years after the crime was committed.
Correct.
What does
Probably
that
more
look like?
Well, in my case, I told the government no need to indict me. I'll plead. I'm not going to go to trial. No need to indict me. So I pled to what's called an information, which is essentially the same thing as you're still a convicted felon.
It's an
So
info
we
charge.
negotiated a plea agreement in lieu of them coming to my home at 6 a.m. with guns and dogs and helicopters to arrest and book me, and I got to post bond. So the end result is the same. I pled guilty and I'm a convicted felon who went to prison, but we spent many months negotiating a plea
I
agreement.
see.
In fact, I'm friends with and I work with the U.S. attorney that arrested me because he's now a defense attorney in Los Angeles who sends some of his clients to white collar advice. So it's kind of, and the FBI agent as well. He invited me out to the academy in Quantico, Virginia to speak and train some new agents. So it's crazy how this has come full circle. But to your specific question, the arraignment process, was difficult. Pleading guilty was harder than getting sentenced because at least at your sentencing, you get clarity. But the guilty plea was tough because it made it feel real. The Department of Justice press releases that they splatter all over the internet are devastating and embarrassing. And they do it to deter others. They do it because they want people to know. They want a stockbroker in New York or Houston or Hawaii or LA to know this is what happens if you cheat and turn the other way for money. And that was a very difficult time.
When did you decide to get an attorney?
I got an attorney as soon as the FBI showed up at my home, and I couldn't, we arranged an interview about a month later. The problem is, and I joke, I should write a book, How to Flush Money Down the Toilet. I gave money to lawyers, but I didn't give them a chance to defend me properly because I didn't tell them the truth. I feigned ignorance. I blamed others. I rationalized. They never got the truth. So how could they properly defend me?
Justin, why is that happen? Because it's a very common thing. Why do people lie to their attorneys? Is it because they want to appear genuine?
Yes, we don't want to be, we want to be looked at for good things we've done in our life, not as a criminal, not for making victims of other people. So yeah, we don't, who wants to be judged for the bad? Who wants to be looked at like a thief and a criminal? So those are things that it's part of the reason we lie. We don't want to be judged and looked at differently.
My next question was, in your situation, you could afford attorneys. You're spending tons of money. Is there any chance for someone who is declaring indigence in the federal system to get out of something like this? I mean, is there a fair fight that they can actually defend themselves?
So it can be harder because look, if you're indigent, I shouldn't always say it's going to be harder. If you're indigent, you're going to get appointed a federal public defender in the federal system. And frankly, many of them are phenomenal. They're terrific. They're funded by taxpayers. We've had phenomenal outcomes of white collar advice with clients who are indigent, who have worked with federal public defenders. It's really a social calling for them. They're excellent lawyers. Some clients, of course, or like me, will retain a more expensive lawyer. It doesn't always mean you're going to get the best outcome, right? You're paying for these lawyers' degrees and their big offices and their cars and their associates to learn on your dime. And too many people hire lawyers they cannot afford, but even worse, they hire lawyers they don't know how to hold accountable. So if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a stockbroker and you get arrested and you've never hired a lawyer before, how do you know how to hire a lawyer? How do you know what questions to ask? So too many defendants don't get their money's worth. They don't know how to hold them accountable. But to indigent defendants, I've been to a number of sentencing hearings where judges have shown empathy and sympathy for an indigent defendant who didn't have the resources or the means or the education or the background to retain the best law firm or mitigate to the extent that some can. So I was at a conference last week in San Diego where judges discussed this. So it's not always bad. The more resources, the better. But if someone has to go to the federal public defender, if they're indigent, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I just know that there are certain rules that there are certain things that are harder for them, like subpoenas. If you're going to subpoena documents and you're an indigent defendant, whereas the police department or the prosecution, they can just subpoena.
They have endless resources. That's why if you look at some of the media around white collar advice and what we do, they'll say, oh, the pricey consultant who keeps the rich out of prison, right? I mean, that's what they like to say. You go to Washington Post, New York Times, Dr. Phil, all that stuff. It's easy to say that because it creates good media, good headlines. But the truth is, even if you had $1 billion to fight your case, it doesn't match the unlimited resources of the U.S. government because they have our tax. It's not even close to it. It's not even close to a fair fight. So that's always troubled me. Like, oh, I did this interview with Allison Camerata on CNN. She's like, isn't this buying justice? And it's like, buying what? We're trying to even the playing field. They have unlimited resources. We're just trying to convey to the judge that they're different than their version of events. They're going to work the rest of their life to become better. And we're going to ask the judge to take the totality of their life into consideration. We simply help them do that. It's not buying justice. It's trying to make it more fair.
Right. Well, I'll be honest, I didn't know. I mean, I was a police officer. I was what I would consider an expert in the law in Hawaii. And I had no idea how unfair it was for the defense, especially when you're indigent. The fact that they have to show, let's say you're an indigent defendant and you want to subpoena some records. You have to show, number one, that how you're going to use it. You have to convince the judge that the person has the document, that it exists, and you have to justify why you want it to them. Whereas the prosecution can just do it, and they can endlessly subpoena everyone for endless amounts of documents. But to cut down on costs, since the government's footing the bill, it's almost like when you work at a business that, any purchase over $5,000, you have to get approved by 3 supervisors or whatever, because it costs so much money. It's the same type of process. So you have to justify the spending since the government is paying for it. And when I realized all the steps you had to go through, and the fact that you're the defense, no one has to listen to you. No one has to talk to you. No one has to answer your questions. None of that, unless you get a judge to tell them they have to do it through the process of, say, a subpoena, or, you know what I mean?
Well, what's also terrible, and look, I don't buy into the conspiracy theory when people say everyone in prison is innocent. That's not true. Most of the guys will say they did it. But if 98.3% of federal cases lead to plea agreements, why is that? It's in part because the odds of prevailing at trial are like 0. So innocent people who should not be in the system are compelled, or I would argue, cajoled to plead guilty, because if not, the trial tax or penalty is so severe. A practical example: we have a client that was told, if you take a deal, we'll give you probation. Sign the plea agreement, you'll get probation. He said, no, I didn't do it. I'm not going to plead to this. I didn't do it. And they said, okay, we'll take you to trial. He got 51 months in prison. They told him, we'll give you probation if you take a plea agreement. Instead, because he put the government to the test with our tax dollars and made these people work 51 months, that's not just. So it compels people who are innocent to plead guilty. It compels people who, a lot of these cases should be handled civilly, not criminally. I mean, look at how many people we incarcerate in America, right? We have 5% of the world's population, but we warehouse 25% of the prisoners. The costs associated with it contribute. We need those resources for homelessness and poverty and drug addiction. I mean, there are so many things that money can go towards, but we lock up nonviolent people in these prisons for far too long. So, and if you go to trial, it's very hard for the jury to view you objectively when it's your name versus the United States of America. It's just a really big uphill battle, which is why we encourage people, to the extent you can, cut your losses.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is like, what was trial like? How long did it last? And what were there any surprises? Was there anything that shocked you? I mean,
so I've been to trial. So thankfully I pled guilty. So I didn't have a trial. I had a sentencing hearing, but I've attended trials supporting our clients just as a witness in the courtroom. And it's brutal and it's devastating, because much of what they feel is portrayed by the government is inaccurate. And they bring in people to besmirch their character, and they insinuate they've done other things, even if they have evidence that they do not. And they're able to essentially say whatever they like, in my opinion, with impunity, and it sways the jury. It's just very hard to prevail at trial. So going to trial is beyond incredibly taxing mentally. It's expensive. We've had clients spend millions of dollars going to trial, and they all lose because it's very hard to prevail. And part of it is if of a jury here, some guy's making $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, some may think, well, of course the guy's cheating to make that much money. So that's not always the case. So trial can be devastating and expensive. And if you lose, if you exercise your right to go to trial and lose, the sentence could be 2 or 3 times as long had you pled guilty.
There's a hole that I'm missing that is bugging me. And I got to ask, when the FBI showed up at your house, this was before you knew you were being investigated, but they had already started the investigation.
Yes.
The guy said, I'll cooperate. Your name gets brought up. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Then they came to your house.
And my employer rolled on me as well, which any employer did. Their interest is to their shareholders, and they had no loyalty to me. So the UBS began to cooperate with the FBI as well, turned over all my emails. So the FBI was building their evidence, their case.
For how long before they knocked on your door?
They showed up in my home April 28, 2008. It was 2 agents, both wearing FBI jackets. They walked in and they had a binder. I'm like just over 5'10". I kid you not, like these binders went up like to my belly button. And it was every email I'd ever sent at Bear Stearns and UBS. They had them, and it was clear some agent in the academy in Virginia had read them because they were highlighted with notes. And I mean, it was beautifully done. And I saw these emails and it scared the hell out of me. From there, I said, I better get a lawyer. They said, I agree. A month later, we met with the government. And during that meeting with the FBI, I just flat out lied to them. The truth is, if you ever interview with the FBI or the government, 99% of what they ask you, they know the answer to. They're just looking to see if you confirm or corroborate it, if you're going to help them. And unfortunately, I thought that I could trick them, and can't trick the feds.
When you pled guilty, did you understand what you were doing? Did you understand what you were going to get? Was it set in stone, or did they have some leeway?
When I pled guilty, I knew that the cap was 60 months. And based on the way that I had responded to my own troubles, I knew that it was pretty likely that I was going to get the 60 months. I needed some things really to go in my direction to get less than 60 months. In the federal system, there are the sentencing guidelines, which really helps give a judge an idea of what the sentence could look like, a place to start. Some judges ignore them, some do not. So I knew the guidelines were more like 10 or 11 years. I had a cap of 60 months. So I just figured I would get the 60 months.
Was it a surprise when you got that sentencing that it wasn't as bad?
I had a lot of things go well for me leading up to sentencing. My co-defendant got indicted on some new charges. That made a lot of what he said not believable. They had to throw it out. I was working, selling real estate for 3 years, which helped me build a new record showing the judge that I could make money lawfully and pay taxes and get away from my criminal conduct. So a lot of those things helped me. I made significant payments to restitution to the victims. That helped. So I think all of the things taken together, I finally came around and accepted responsibility. I think the government could see that I was contrite and remorseful. It took too long. So all those things taken together, the government asked for 24 months in prison. I got 18 months.
Do you think you got what you deserved?
You know, it's a tough question, I suppose. I mean, any day in prison is a long time. When I got to prison, relative to the long sentences we give out, I was very fortunate. I mean, my bunkie, as I mentioned to you, was from Hawaii. And it was the second time that he'd been in prison. He had a 5-year sentence for a nonviolent drug crime, went home, reoffended while on probation. And because it was his second offense and because it was a mandatory minimum, he got 15 years. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences for selling drugs, but you have to kind of consider, is it fair, right? That a nonviolent drug offender who was raised in poverty, we used to talk about, he used to tell me about what Hawaii is really like tourists from California, we see the beautiful hotels and the beaches and the jet skis and the parasailing and all that great stuff. But he's like, I was in the ghetto, man. We were practically on the street. We rarely had running water. My mom was working 3 jobs. My father was in prison. He's like, that's the Hawaii that I know. And I wasn't educated. I didn't go to school. I saw no value in school. The only way that I can make money was by using and selling drugs. So when you hear that I got 18 months with privilege, with opportunity, with knowing right from wrong, yeah, you could and creating victims and hurting people, while not with a gun or a knife, but with my tongue, it could compel someone to think, is it fair? And I don't disagree with that. I don't. And I know it brings some pleasure to victims to know that most white collar defendants do suffer for the rest of their life. It's not just the prison term. Everyone's just focused on the prison term. It's all of the collateral consequences that follow. So 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, who knows? But I do know it really is a scarlet letter on you for the rest of your life.
And I'm going to get to that. I guess for the sake of flow, if we could, I want to talk about pre-sentence, your pre-sentence behavior and your pre-sentence decisions. You had said that a few things had happened. Your co-defendant made some screwed up and he probably lost credibility. I'm assuming that
He just didn't lose. They indicted him on new federal charges. So they had to rip up his plea agreement. He got the maximum under his guilty plea. That was a huge break for me.
So fruit of the poisonous tree, if this guy is now impeached, essentially things that he said aren't reliable, they can't fall back on him. Anything they got out of those statements they couldn't use.
Yes. And by then I had agreed to plead guilty and accept responsibility. But even without them, they would have had enough to get me because of UBS. But still, he was very important to their case. And when he got indicted, it made him look much less credible and he had new federal charges to fight.
How much time did you have to self-surrender?
2 months.
So 60 days.
And that was a tough time because the finality is set in and you're packing and moving out of your home. And that was the tough time. It was all tough of my own wrongdoing. But yeah, 2 months.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your transition. So what was your last week like before you go in? I mean, are you getting used to the idea? Or is it getting more anxious and is it getting more hectic? Is it getting more painful for your family? What's that last week leading up to self-surrender like?
Well, fighting a criminal case, there's what I would say are higher highs and lower lows. Higher highs like, I can do this, I'm strong, I'm great, I'm going to overcome adversity. People have been through worse, people have overcome worse. You've got to find perspective. It's not that long in your life. Then lower lows are, I can't get out of bed, I can't brush my teeth, I can't shower. I'm going to sit in all day with the blinds down thinking, how in the hell did I end up here? That's what it was like the week leading into it, right? I was very out of shape before I went to prison. So one day I'm like, I'm going to become a runner, I'm going to become a runner and I'm going to think and I'm going to create and I'm going to do things great. And then the next day I'm like, it can't be done. I got to rebuild my reputation. I got to get a job. I got to make money. There's no future for me. I can't do anything. I flushed my whole life down the toilet, right? So that was what it was like leading up to it. I do recall like the days leading up to my surrender to prison, just resting in my bed and I'd say, wow, 4 days from now, I'm going to be in prison. And then it would be, wow, 3 days from now, my head's going to be in a pillow in prison. 2 days from now, my head's going to be in a pillow. And then like, finally, when I was trying to sleep that first night in prison, I'm like, I can't believe I'm here. I'm actually here. I cannot believe I'm in prison. It was so surreal. And it was just, in retrospect, part of the reason we encourage people to document their journey is because you always remember things differently after they happen. Like, so you're a father, right? I mean, like you may remember your children's birth differently now. Like when my daughter came out, I'm like, I don't want to drop her. Please, I can't drop her. I need her to be safe. But in retrospect, it's one of the greatest days of my life. I was stressed to hell that day. So I really believe in documenting the process to authenticate it, to really, for posterity to have it. So like even behind me, you see 2 of my books. So that's my prison journal there. And I began writing things. And if I was to rip that thing down or look at some of the things I wrote in prison, you know what I'd say to myself? What a crying little baby I was. Why did I write that? Well, that's what I felt 3 weeks into my term. I see it differently now, 14 years later. So that first day in retrospect, it was just one day in my life. But while I was enduring it, it was a tough day.
Who dropped you off?
My mom and brother. And that was a mistake because, I was 33, wasn't married, didn't have children. So it was tough for my mom to see that. I wish my brother had just driven me. I surrendered to Taft Prison near Bakersfield, hot, very hot, all dusty, agriculture, about 105 miles outside of Los Angeles. You get off the 5 freeway and you go down a dusty road for about 20 miles and you just see this massive complex. So I regretted having my mom come with me as well. And yeah, it's nothing, it's nothing no mother should have to see, especially the way that I was raised. I mean, I really did have a silver spoon. I really did have opportunities. And yeah, I let them down. I let a lot of people down, including her.
So how does it work? You walk up steps into a building, or is it just a chain link fence with?
You surrender. Well, and ultimately I made my way to the camp. You surrender to the high security prison, which is fenced in. So I walked into the high security prison, just said, hello, my name is Justin Paperny. I'm here to self-surrender. They asked me for my registration number. I told them 444991112. They asked me if I had anything that I was surrendering with, like medications or money. I had no medications. I did have some money. I tried to get in with a watch and a pair of shoes. They didn't let me go in with them. They took them, in part because the prison industrial complex is really big money. They want you to purchase things in the commissary. So Nike or Coca-Cola or Hershey's can make money. They don't want you to come in with it. And they say you can't bring it in because it threatens the security of the institution, as absurd as that sounds. So I walked in. It was a big deal for me, but for them, it was nothing, right? They've seen tens of thousands of people come in. They're just going about their day, asking questions about my mental health. Who do I call if something happens? Any injuries, any mental health issues. Sat in a cell for several hours. Went through my first strip search, which as I wrote about in Lessons from Prison, didn't go well. I didn't understand the concept of squat and cough. So I was like moving my feet back and forth like a sumo wrestler, like done, done, done. The guard started laughing at me. And I just wasn't conditioned.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was terrible. He had
the dreaded laugh during a squat and cough.
He had this huge thing of chewing tobacco in, which I was jealous because I used to chew Copenhagen and Red Man. I loved it. But he had this huge thing of chewing tobacco. He had a 7-Eleven cup that he had brought in. And he could tell that I was new and I'd never been confined before. And he was kind of having some fun with me, I think. But I knew that he meant well. He wasn't trying to, it was just, he's done it thousands of times. I hate to say it, but this is what some guards said to me. And you look at some of my TikTok videos, people are like, you went to prison? Like, I can't believe you're in prison. Like, and it's true. Like, I don't get parking tickets. I'm pretty conservative. Like, I don't speed. Like, generally, I've always done it the right way. So some guards used to say, like, how did you end up in prison? Like, you avoid problems. You have a really good routine. And I'm like, that's part of the perception. That's part of the problem. I think I thought I was immune or above the law, that someone like me couldn't go to prison. Part of why I'm here. No one's above the law. No one's better than the next person. Instead of acting with arrogance and hubris, I should have acted with humility and decency. And that's a lesson I learned in prison.
Man, so your first day in prison after you process, what's that like? What's going through your head?
Well, they drive you from the higher security prison over to the camp where I served time. And they just kind of
what's that? What is the difference? What's the prison and what's the camp? I never understood that.
So the low security prison is fenced in, where with barbed wire and the razor coil, it looks like a real prison. So it's going to have 1,500 prisoners, fenced in, a different type of prisoner, meaning someone in the low would have a sentence of up to 20 years. If you're a sex offender, you could be in a low. If you're not an American citizen, you'll be in the low. If you have a gang affiliation, you're going to be in the low. If there could be some violence as part of your past, you could be in a low. A minimum security camp where I serve time, you have to have 10 years less to the door, classified by the Federal Bureau of Prisons that you are indeed eligible for a minimum security camp. You have to be an American citizen, no gang affiliation, no gun charges, things of that nature, no escape attempts. So that classified me as a minimum security, as a camper, as they would call it. So it's much smaller. There's no fences or barbed wire. You could literally walk out. In fact, earlier this week, you may have read 4 people escaped from a federal prison camp in St. Petersburg, Florida. Some guys had like 8, 9, 10 years left. They just walked right out. So you're not fenced in. Part of the reason some people will call it a country club or club fed, because they're like, oh, I see tennis courts and I see a bocce ball and I see a soccer field and volleyball. It's party time 101 there, right? A viral video I did on YouTube, TikTok with more than 2 million views. You see like, oh, this is club fed. It's Camp Snoopy, and I kind of have fun with it. Right. I think it's still prison, but it's certainly nothing like we see sensationalized in Shawshank Redemption or Cool Hand Luke or things like that. But it is still prison.
How long did it take you to fit in?
I was fortunate to have several weeks, probably more like 6 weeks. I was fortunate to have a mentor, Michael Santos, who served 26 consecutive years in prison. And he had been in for 22 years when I met him. He started off in the penitentiary. He was in Atlanta penitentiary for 8 years and worked his way from behind the median to the low to the camp. So he began to mentor me, saw that I was avoiding problems, working hard, and we just organically formed a friendship. He helped me adjust and really understand that the rules, both written and unwritten, of prison. And some things are obvious, like don't speak to staff and don't cut in line and don't yell on the phone and wash your hands after using the restroom and do your job. Those things are obvious. Things that are not so obvious are forming the wrong friendship could really, you can be like guilty by association. If you form a friendship with someone that speaks with staff or cooperates or causes a lot of trouble or gambles, staff is going to think you're like that dude, right? So really understanding those sorts of things, not complaining about the length of your sentence. So really embracing and understanding the unwritten rules of prison helped me get off to a really good start. And that enabled me to have a really productive journey. But there are, days that are tough, but in retrospect, not so tough, right? I mean, big deal, cold showers for 10 days, big deal. Purposely doing fire alarm drills at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., or 3 a.m. because the guards can. And then not a big deal. And I found pleasure not complaining about it. They wanted you to complain. That they got some fun out of that. For me, I just wanted to be very stoic, live with some dignity, not complain, not beg for more halfway house time, not beg for things because I didn't need to and I didn't want to. So the key thing for me was avoiding problems. There are problems in these prisons: iPhones, drugs, meth, food, sex with guards. I mean, a new prisoner with whom I'd been in prison for about 8 months, and there was a doctor from Vegas sleeping with the prison guard. He's married with kids. I mean, think about that. His wife and kids are standing by him. He's having sex with a female prison guard. They both get caught. He goes to a higher security prison. Could have had new charges. All she had to say is, this guy tried to rape me. Thankfully for him, she said it was consensual. She got fired. He got shipped out. So there are problems in these prisons. You have to avoid them.
Wow, that was one of my next questions, was about the corruption with the guards or with the leadership.
A guard a week gets arrested in America, right? Just Google it. We have guards reach out to us. And it's funny sometimes when they call. I know you're a former law enforcement, so I'll say this respectfully, but they'll always say, well, some inmate trapped me, or they duped me, or they manipulated me. And I'll say, hey, bud, don't call them an inmate. You're not a guard anymore. They're people. And you're making excuses and rationalizations. You chose to be manipulated. You didn't like what you were making, and you thought it'd be fun to bring in iPhones, and you thought it would be cool to charge $5 for every minute. You chose to seize that opportunity. And some say, you know what, you're right. Some say, no, you don't get it. These inmates took advantage of me, and they still talk like guards, even though they'll be standing for count soon. So guards can be some guards can be corrupted. Any human, a lot of humans can be corrupted if you don't understand your values, and if you don't give thought to how your decisions will influence your family and future days, weeks, and months to come. And that's why people end up in prison. They make decisions without considering how it will influence their life in days, weeks, and months to come. And I hope anyone watching this gives thought to that.
Yeah, I find it fascinating when you have cops that go dirty, or that you have prison guards who are bringing drugs in. It happens all the time in Hawaii. And I just can't understand, or that the recent one where the girl runs away with the murderer.
Yep.
And then kills herself during that high-speed chase and the whole deal, the day she retires to get her retirement.
That was fascinating. That was, I agree with that. That was, they thought they were soulmates apparently, and you work your whole life and buy a house and pay off your mortgage and go into retirement. Look, some people break the law and get enticed because they're bored, they're lonely, they're living a directionless life. There have been we have had clients at White Collar Advice who have said to us, and it's not that common, say, it was exciting going through this. My life was boring for 30 freaking years, man. Get up, go to work, get up, go to work, get up, go to work, 2 days off, go to Grand Canyon for 5 days, have sex with my wife every 9 months, It's just miserable, bored to death. So many people were like, this is exciting, man. People care about me. People are coming after me. Prison's going to be fun. That happened. So that in that case, I think being a guard in that sense and living alone in that life, she was manipulated and she thought that she was in love. And there are people who can manipulate and who have a sixth sense, especially a killer serving life.
Well, tell me about your time in prison. Did you experience any firsthand corruption or firsthand, mistreatment? Or you already mentioned the games about fire alarms at 1 a.m. and cold showers for 10 days. Those are things that are it's funny because it's hard to nail that down as corruption or ill treatment or whatever. Because first of all, it's happening to prisoners. So the majority of people are like, who cares?
Yeah.
You're doing this to prisoners, whatever. So it's like, you can't label that as corruption, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just
I did not see corruption as much as I saw guards turning the other way from things they probably should not have turned the other way from. Like guards knowing that prisoners aren't doing their job. They're like, don't do your job. I don't care. I don't live here. But it makes other people have to do their work, right? Or some prisoners getting some favors if they cooperate with staff. So they may ask you, hey, are you willing to cooperate? Well, what's the benefit for me? More phone time, more commissary, more, just more privileges. So they will encourage people to look for information of wrongdoing within the prison, and that inmate or prisoner will come back and report it. I laid low. There was one time that was an uncomfortable experience. While in prison, I was working on a daily blog that I would send home to my mom, and she would put it on the internet. And a university in Chicago, DePaul University, came across my work, and they reached out. This business ethics class at the business school asked if I would contribute to a documentary on white collar crime. And they wanted to get permission to fly out from Chicago to film me. The warden approved it. The day of the interview, after the count at 10:30, I was due to walk to the low security prison for the interview. And nobody knew. I kept it low because I didn't want to show off. I didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't want anyone to know because I knew it wouldn't come out until years after I was released from prison. And nobody really knew about my blog. Some knew because their wives and girlfriends were sending it in, like, do what this guy is doing. But I kept it under wraps. Then my counselor in front of everyone said, I need the celebrity. I need the celebrity. I need the celebrity. The big university from Chicago has flown out with all their trucks and cameras, and they're here to interview you. And everyone's like, what's that? Where are you going? What that? And then I had to answer questions for it. Why did a university come out to you? What are you doing? What are you talking? You talking about prison? You talking about what we doing? It's like, dude, I'm just going to talk about ethics and the consequences of white collar crime. It opened me up to having to respond to people I'd never responded to before. So that wasn't corruption, but it was inappropriate. And I think the guard was just jealous, or the counselor was just jealous that I was getting some attention.
Man, I can only imagine that feeling of him saying that in front of everybody. And you had
a female,
yeah.
Miss M.
You had thought about you're like holding it under wraps. You're trying to just keep everything nice and tight. And then she goes and says something like that. And you're thinking, it's just trivial to her, but to you, the amount of problems that could cause. I can only imagine, like, my heart dropped thinking about that moment. Those are the moments that only you will really be able to articulate and remember. She barely remembers. She probably doesn't remember a second of that,
Right.
But what that could have caused for you. And then did that come out? Did that documentary end up coming out, or did you not do it?
No, it did come out. I actually put it up on my YouTube channel probably a couple of years ago. So you'll see the actual footage of me getting interviewed in federal prison when I had much more hair, much bigger muscles.
Well,
that was a cool day.
It's
the first time. I'll send you the link. It's the first time I'd ever shared my story. And I recall when it was over thinking, I could do this. I'm not going to run from it. Human beings make bad mistakes. And I really enjoyed it. It was cathartic to speak openly about it.
Were you in prison with anyone famous? I know that I did some research on Taft, just trying to see like who was there. And I know like Tommy Chong was there.
He was there. He was there with Jordan Belfort.
Yeah, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. They were
They were
bunkies or
there.
something?
They were there just before me. There was someone who wouldn't be famous, but the CEO of Brocade Communications, the billionaire Greg Reyes, was there. But probably the most famous were Tommy Chong and Jordan Belfort.
Jordan Belfort.
Yeah.
But they were there before you.
They were there before me. Yeah.
You were there in what year?
2008 to 2000, April 2008 to May 2009.
What are some of the rules that we always hear about? The rules, like you sit with your own race, you know, there's shower rules, there's things like that. What are some of those rules that you wouldn't think about when you get there that are strictly for prison? And are they universal at all prisons?
I would say they're probably pretty universal. Some unwritten rules include the bathroom. Even though the shower stalls were private, you're not supposed to shower across from anybody else, even though it's private. It's weird. It was odd. I filmed a TikTok video where I say I'm walking in to take a shower and some guy taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to take a shower." He's like, "Don't you see all these people are in line for a reason?" So that's an unwritten rule. Don't shower across from someone. I think an unwritten rule is you should, not all prisoners sit with the appropriate race in the chow hall. Some do. Prisoners, a lot of prisoners don't do their job, though I think it's encouraged. You should absolutely do your job. Tons of people don't. So an unwritten rule, I would argue, is not speaking to staff, though you'd be surprised at how many people do. So there's just these nuances to life in custody that takes some getting used to, right? Not speaking too loudly on the phone. I mean, what you don't want to do is, "Hey, great news, I'm getting out in 3 weeks. This is the greatest day of my life." And the guy on the phone next to you has got 12 years left to serve. So it's really understanding your environment and recognizing that there are people who may be looking for trouble. A lot of the troubles happens in the TV room, the gambling, the hustling. Guys are in that TV room all day, and that's where problems can pop up. So you just have to watch and observe and just really pay attention. And at times it requires a great deal of humility and not responding in kind when challenged, right? Some people may be concerned about their present prison reputation or not looking weak. While I was never challenged, that was of no concern to me. I just wanted to get out. But there are prisoners who get too comfortable and they kind of think they understand this environment and they try to manipulate it, and they can really lead to trouble, selling drugs, tons of things.
What's it like? What's the cell like? How big is the cell? How many people are in the cell? How is it set up? Is there a common area?
In the low-end camp, it's a cubicle. So it's an open dorm, and there's four dorms, A, B, C, and D. B and D are upstairs. You walk in, there's on the far row, there's cubicles, middle row cubicles, far right cubicles.
Just like an office.
2 walkways. Yeah. In the front, there's going to be 3 huge TV rooms, the counselor and case manager's office, a row of phones in the front. So it's an open living environment in the front. You're going to see the toilets and the showers and a microwave, a room with microwaves, a room to do your laundry. So it's very much it's a big complex, right? You outside the dorm is the track and the chow hall and camp control, the library, chapel, whole agriculture area where some guys do gardening and do their work. So it's a very big complex.
So where do you sleep?
Just you sleep in the cubicle in a little rack. The mattress is probably this big, like that, and you just sort of adjust.
So everyone's got access to everyone in that.
Yeah, like an unwritten rule is you shouldn't walk into somebody else's cubicle. You shouldn't look into a cubicle as you're walking by. You shouldn't go in and sit on somebody's rack. I had an upper bunk, which I liked because 1, nobody could sit on it. And 2, it was really hard to get up to that upper rack. So I wouldn't go up there and get lazy and sleep and nap and do things like that. But it's tough to get on that upper rack, man. The slab is like this small. I slipped 2 or 3 times and it cracked my head open.
You know, you hearing you say that makes me think about the dynamic, the social dynamic. It seems to me like people that have some type of street experience, that have like understand the streets, that are from the streets, that grew up in maybe, urban areas, that are used to that kind of environment would have an easier time, only because they understand you don't walk by and look in somebody's cubicle just because when you're walking down the street and someone's sitting on, say, the stoop, the same reason you don't look over at what they're doing, because you grew up with these kind of rules. It seems to me like the white collar criminal, the typical white collar criminal, would probably have a harder time understanding those social things, like not talking to staff.
Yeah. There's no, you summed it up well. That's correct. Because a white collar defendant who doesn't think they're really a criminal, it would be easier for them to identify with staff who's a law-abiding citizen than a drug dealer serving 20 years. So that's one reason. And to, like, my bunkie Jay from Hawaii, like, he used to say to me, like, I don't need to go home. I get 3 meals a day here, air conditioning. I get to exercise. He was a runner. He loved to play softball. He was a runner, softball, had a great group of friends, mentored all the young Hawaiians when they came in. So he was like a role model to them.
Oh, nice.
So he's like kind of like a hero in prison. He's a mentor. He's a role model. He didn't feel that way at home. He's like, he used to say to me, like, what am I going to release to? Who's going to hire me? Right? I've been in jail for 15, 20 years. I have no education. What am I going to go get a job at a hotel? Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
So like, he was totally comfortable there. He was happy there. So while I may think a 5-inch mattress is small for him, he's like, it's better than being homeless on, Waikiki while the rich tourists are walking by me to go to, whatever the hell it is. So you're right about perspective and people having different experiences. There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, as you talked about those rules, I realized that every little subculture has its own rules, but I realized that a lot of them are similar. I can imagine someone wanting to talk to a member of the staff just because you want to humanize each other. You want to connect. If you're used to being social with people, walking into nice restaurants, or, always going, having family around, you're more social. You realize, like, yeah, I can talk to anybody. You grew up with not a lot of risk, not a lot of danger. And so talking to people is simpler. Whereas the people that I've spent time with who grew up in crime or poverty, they wouldn't react that way if they were free. If they were out, there's just things that they wouldn't do because it raises danger. I always talked about, like, the criminals that I mostly dealt with criminals. I didn't deal with normal people, so to speak. I mean, I worked midnights in Chinatown. If I ran into you at 2 a.m. in Chinatown, you were up to no good. I wasn't dealing with normal people. I wasn't doing traffic stops and tagging people for, speeding. That's not what we did in Chinatown. But the people that I dealt with as criminals, like, they acted a certain way. And we had the same dynamic on the street. If there's no way a police officer can end all crime in his area, especially in Chinatown. There's so much happening. You have to pick your battles. You can't get rid of prostitution and drug dealing and the financial crimes and, rape and kidnapping and murderers and all this stuff is happening. It's a losing battle. So you end up picking your battles, and you run into guys who are willing to snitch, who are willing to give you info. And it's like, you have to mitigate the crimes that are happening in your area. It's almost like things have a priority. And so you realize there's some people committing crimes who aren't violent, who aren't, who kind of take care of their area. There was a lot of, like, prostitutes in Chinatown. There's a lot of drug dealers in Chinatown. And if we never heard of them, it was almost like an unspoken thing. Like, hey, if you are maintaining your neighborhood, right? If there's not gunshots going out in this block, if we're not getting robberies, if we're not getting all this crazy stuff, you don't see us because we have other things to be doing. But the moment you lose control of your block, so to speak, we start showing up because we get complaints and we get whatever. It's almost like police officers have to understand, and criminals, they have this understanding, like, hey, if you're being smart about what you're doing, you don't ever have to see me. I got enough people who are blatantly doing things that are hurting people that I can impact and affect right now, where you get kind of thrown on the back burner. And so I think about that inside of a prison. I'm like, man, as soon as you said there are guys who had snitches, there's staff who have snitches, like, they basically run snitch networks. From a law enforcement perspective, in my head, I'm thinking that's smart. It's hard to really manage all these people you're quite literally outnumbered. If they're in federal prison, if they're in prison at all, they're probably criminals. They understand they have certain codes. People don't like to talk. And I can imagine you being the new guy, you're kind of on a list. Like, I wonder if the staff are like, that's a guy we're gonna, like, you can tell looking at him, oh, we're gonna talk to him. He's gonna
They
work with
try.
us.
Yeah, they'll try, and they'll ask you that first day. And we encourage people simply to say
No
no.
way.
Yeah, they'll ask you.
Wow. It's just right out front.
They'll ask you. Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever make any mistakes in prison?
Oh, sure. I engaged in the prison hustle too quickly. I didn't get caught, but I got exploited for a couple of things. I traded my way to a new mattress a little too quickly. I negotiated my way to a better job, which was nearly when it didn't go great as I tried to do it. I'd only been in jail about a week. I certainly made some mistakes, but they weren't the worst mistake. I've never really taken medications, but I struggled. I had a bout of insomnia in prison. And one night someone said, "Hey man, just take this pill. It'll help you sleep." And I just said I was in bad shape. And I took it. Now, had that person been cooperating or looking to get me in trouble, he could have gone to staff to say, this guy took an unauthorized medicine. I'd have failed a drug test. And then I'd have been in a whole lot of trouble. I didn't get caught, but that's a situation where bad things really could have happened. I did see some fights, and I saw guys. The main problem I saw working in the kitchen was guys taking out utensils and food to cook upstairs because they would cook and sell the food or get paid to cook. So it's funny, I went to prison in part by turning the other way, and to get through prison successfully, you always have to turn the other way from things that are wrong.
Wow. That's a great full circle
Yeah.
principle. What was your best day in prison?
When I was about a week before I was released, I got a copy of my book, Lessons from Prison, in the mail. And it was very satisfying to get the book because I had embarked on this vision with Michael Santos, my now partner, to write it. And to get it before I was released was very satisfying. It was satisfying to say you're going to do something and then do it. I had a lot of great days. Running 10 miles every day for 60 days was very satisfying. Fasting for a day, I'd never done that before. Really trying to manage my diet and my health was a great day. Not complaining was a great day. Writing letters home, thanking people for loving and standing by me. You can have great days in prison if you're pursuing your values. So I had tons of great days in prison, and I didn't want the experience to end or be over. I wanted to try to soak it up as best I could.
Did you make friends in prison?
I did. I formed some friends with Michael, my partner. My good friend Andrew Alchek died, unfortunately, in prison. He had a bad heart, and he had an aneurysm while running, a brain aneurysm while running. He had a bad heart. I'm sorry. He had something happened while running. He died. That was very hard. He got me into running, and he was a good friend. Other than that, I kind of kept my bunkie Jay from Hawaii was great to me. We had a very open relationship with it. Like, my locker was open, get whatever you want. A lot of guys are going to close their locker and he would take whatever he wanted. I would take what I needed from his locker. Like, hey, I'm out of granola. I'm out of Diet Coke. Can I get some bread and peanut butter? Yes, I had an open door policy. He always invited me to eat with him and all the Hawaiians, and they would cook some of the most creative meals from food they purchased in the commissary, the noodles and the peppers and the jalapenos and the tapatio, the way they would mix it together. And they really welcomed me. They really took good care of me in that. I think they appreciated that I knew my sentence was brief. I knew that I was fortunate. I was humble. I was polite. I never complained, ever. And I think they saw that I was trying to make the best out of the situation. And I was quiet. I didn't snore. I'm clean. I kept my cubicle clean. So I would be like the type of, I was a good bunkie in prison because I'm incredibly respectful. So I think, while I don't speak with Jay anymore, in part because you're not allowed really to communicate with people once you leave prison. They don't want you communicating with felons while you're on probation. So it's sort of weird, you go to prison, you make all those friendships, you can't talk to them. So, but I'm still certainly in touch with some people, and yeah, it feels like a long time ago now.
Let me ask you this. Was there anything different about the Hawaiians that here's why I asked. Let me preface this. I got to live there for almost 7 years for my longest stay, and I'd lived there before. And there was something really special about Hawaiians. And the aloha culture, the ohana family culture was something that was so precious to me and my family. And they took us in, they hanai'd us. It's like they adopted us. And the Hawaiian families that we knew were just so special and instrumental. They named my kids. They're just the most special people. And when you brought it up, it wasn't a question I'd thought about asking, but when you brought up that Jay was in, your bunkie and he was from Hawaii and he would let you sit at the table with the guys, was there anything that you noticed about them that was different?
Yes. And I'm not saying other cultures don't do this. I'm sure they do. But to your questions of Hawaiians or Jay, they had a great deal of sympathy for me. They weren't like some guys in prison were like, man, you're just a rich white dude who bought his way to an 18-month sentence. Okay. That came from white guys too. But Jay and all of those guys, one of them was Renee. Jay, there was Renee. They had a great deal of sympathy that I was in prison, and they knew that 18 months, well, for them or for some was nothing. For me, it was a long time. And Jay, after my visit, would say, like, how is your mom? Is she okay? Is she feeling better? I know it's got to be hard for her to visit you. And I'm thinking like, damn, this guy's serving 15 years and his family can't even afford to come out from Hawaii to visit him. His family didn't see him for, I think, 8 or 9 years. They couldn't afford it. I mean, it's an expensive trip. And yet I'm visiting 3 times a month. He wasn't jealous. Like, oh, damn you that you visit every week. He's like, how's your mom? That's got to be tough for her to see, right? You're strong. Get through it. Be proud for her. So they were welcoming. They were humble. They were kind. And they just kind of, they made it feel like what they had was mine. I'll never forget Jay telling me, he's like, you're in with us now, or you're good. Like, and they didn't want anything in return. See, sometimes people in prison, you'll do something and they'll want something, like buy me something in the commissary, or they don't tell you they want something, but they want something. So you have to figure it out what it is they want. You just ask them. With Jay, it was never that, or any of the guys, it was never that. It was, hey, let's just get through this together and be productive, live life and be happy, and don't complain. So Jay's the one, he spoke a lot about humility and gratitude. And there were last story I'll tell about Jay. I remember thinking, like, how is he talking about humility and gratitude when he's had such a hard life? Like, how is he finding humility and gratitude with such a hard life that he's had? Father in prison and, education, and I guess the point is that if he's finding it, how the hell could I not find it? It was just very, it was just, those are some of the benefits of federal prison.
Jay sounds a lot like the people that I knew. And I don't think it's coincidental. I mean, there's something really special about the culture in Hawaii, which is no doubt probably why some of your best times were in Hawaii. It really is a special place. It changed my life. It changed my family's life. And that's why I still continue to do a podcast that so strongly revolves around Hawaii and the impact that it's had. The rules that you were talking about that people had, like where you can sit and showering and things like that, it makes sense to me that Jay, despite rules or there's certain things you can't break because it causes everyone trouble, but where they can, it must have been really awesome to have people reach out and help and try to connect with you in a place that you were already full of anxiety, not, fear of the unknown, things like that, knowing that people have ulterior motives. And I bet you if 10 people asked if they could help you, 2 of them probably really wanted to help you, and the other 8 were looking to put some equity in the bank. And it's like,
yeah, man. I would say with a lot of those guys, there's, altruism is an interesting topic, like doing just to do, because it's the right thing. A lot of people would say everyone has their own self-interest. I would say with those guys, They literally just wanted to help me. Maybe the thing in return for them, it felt good for them to help someone new or welcome me. I don't know. But I know if there were some people who were altruistic in prison, it was those guys who helped me. And when I left, I gave Jay my belongings. He didn't ask for it. I gave him my shoes and my Walkman, and because we had the same, we were both 9.5s. And he's like, "Oh, you don't have to give this to me." I'm like, "I'm going to be home. I can buy a new pair of shoes. I just want to leave with these lessons I learned." He never asked for them, knew that I was going home. Other dudes did, guys I didn't know, and didn't ask and wouldn't have cared. Wouldn't have been upset if I didn't. I just felt like it's the smallest thing that I could have done. And he actually invited me into his cubicle. So because he'd been in prison for so long, he was in the back of the dorm, which is the desired part of the dorm. His bunkie got transferred to another prison. And he's like, he knew that I was clean, and woke up early. And he said, "Hey, go to the counselor, you're going to come in my cubicle." And I'm like, "Cool." And I did. And then the counselor right away said, "Is he okay?" He's like, "He's in." The next day I was in the queue.
No way.
It was great. That's how it works. Yeah. The counselor will go ask the long-term prisoner, "Hey, are you cool with this guy?" He put in a request. "Are you okay with it?" And it happened within a day.
Man, that's crazy that something that's monitored so closely, or that you'd think that they could just assign. I imagine it's important that they want the prisoners to be happy as much as possible.
They do a good job. Staff does a good job of respecting long-term prisoners, right? When you've been in jail 10 or 20 years and that's your life, staff is going to respect that. They're going to give you your preferred bunk, your preferred job. They're not going to sweat you over if you had a pair of pants that you sewed into a pair of shorts that technically is contraband. They're going to let those things go, right? There's a level of respect that comes with having served so long in prison.
And it's fascinating because you learn how to work the system, even in the union kind of runs the police department, right? So there are rules with seniority and there's things like that. In our unit, which was a 4-man unit, there's rules with who can go to the unit, and it's seniority based. Yeah. But there's ways around that. And it's not breaking the rules, but it's more like when someone's leaving your unit, which I'm drawing a parallel with the bunk situation. When someone's leaving your unit, if no one knows anyone's leaving, chances are of anyone putting into this really tight unit that no one gets to go to because no one ever leaves it, because it's like a prized unit. If no one knows to put in, no one puts in.
Right.
And so you keep it under wraps when you know someone's going to leave. And then the day before for putting in for the transfers or whatever, you guys have already been working who you wanted to bring to the unit. And you say, "Hey, put in your transfer to whatever." They put in the next day. They're the only one that put in. They get to come into the unit when there was probably 100 people that wanted it who had more time, but there's like a system there. Yeah. And so I'm drawing this parallel to this guy who earned his right in the back. He's been here longer than everybody and all this good stuff. And then he comes to you and says, "Hey, put in for the bunk." And then the next day you're in there. So he kind of managed that right. Sure. He got to pick who he wanted to mitigate the losses.
And that's why it comes back to those to the people may not speak with you, but they're watching, right? So like an unwritten rule, you don't change clothes in your cubicle. I never saw a guy naked in jail. You go to the bathroom stall to shower. I learned that quickly, right? So it's these sorts of things that he was watching, and just we had similar values: exercise, eating healthy, sharing, kind, cool, not complaining. We both went to bed like at 7:30 every night. We went to bed really, really early. So, but that's why when people go, people are always assessing them and watching. And,
I like that. It's a long game.
You got to begin with the end in mind and work your way back.
Yeah, because it shows you're genuine.
Yeah.
And whereas you can tell someone comes in and right away they're looking to fit in. They're trying to make themselves like
that happens. Guys try to impress.
Yeah.
Right. I filmed that TikTok video where some guy got himself extorted because all he did was talk about how much money he made. And it's like, why are you trying to impress guys in jail, man? Just focus on your family and avoid trouble and get home. But too many guys can't do that.
Right. Because he lived a life where that stuff he
mattered to people. That was his value, that he could buy things and show off and impress people.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
You'll get called out for that in certain cultures, in certain neighborhoods, in certain whatever. It doesn't fly. You get robbed when you show off your money in certain places. And so someone that grows up in that environment, they go to prison, They're like, yo, I just want to keep my head down, do my time.
Right. That's right. That's right.
It's amazing the parallels
Yeah.
on the inside and on the out. Although they're more extreme in prison because they're more focused. It's like living under a magnifying glass. The risk reward is greater. The swings are higher. The lows are lower. The highs are higher. It's like much more of an extreme.
Yeah.
The reactions are more dangerous. You know, everything seems magnified.
Yep. That's right.
So I have a question from one of my patrons. I mentioned in my patrons that I was going to be interviewing you. This is from My Melt. He says, how's the cuisine in the joint? I checked, even the commissary food and supplies are bare bones. What time are the meals and how long are they?
Meals are 3 times a day. Breakfast, 6:30, 6 a.m. It will open 6 to 6:30. Chow hall from lunch is at around 11:30 or so. Dinner, 4:30 p.m. or so, 3 meals a day. The food is very heavily processed, rice, beans, tortillas, a lot of turkey meat, vegetables if served very raw, fruit, very, I don't want to say rotten, but not certainly the cream of the crop. You really can eat well in the commissary. You can spend $360 a month in the commissary to purchase food, clothing, shoes, in the old days, tobacco, lotions, toothpaste. I saw some of the most creative meals in prison, meals cooked by way of purchasing food in the commissary. You can buy, at the time, jalapenos, tomatoes, tortillas, roast beef, mackerel, tuna, spaghetti, marinara sauce, cook in the microwave with olive oil, really get creative. They post a menu in the dorm of what the meal is going to be. So prisoners can see a 2-week menu. So you kind of decide like, well, I'm not going down for that bologna sandwich. I'm not going to go down for this, but I am going to go to chicken night. I am going to go to pizza night. I am going to go down to mole, which is a big deal. A lot of guys like the mole. So you assess when you're going to go down to the chow hall and when you don't. You just got to learn to cook upstairs. One thing that I did was use stamps to pay guys to cook for me. Burritos and tacos and enchiladas. Some of the best meals I had were in prison. And that's how a lot of guys earn their living. You'll buy the food in the commissary, you'll give it to them, they'll cook it, and you'll give them a book of stamps for cooking the meal.
Wow.
Food was much better than I had expected. There's also a kosher menu. If you're Jewish and kosher, you get a special menu with kosher food, things like that. Yeah.
You only have access to that if you're kosher?
Yes, you have to get approved by the warden to be on the kosher. And if you eat anything that is not kosher, that's a disciplinary infraction and you can get into trouble. Yeah.
Because they're working hard to get you kosher
stuff. It costs
stuff.
more money it's more fresh vegetables and fruit.
So if you get caught selling fresh stuff to somebody else, if you get declared kosher, so you can get fresher stuff or nicer stuff, and then you get caught selling.
Guys did that a lot. They get into trouble. You can only shop in the comments, buy certain things in the commissary as well if you're kosher. There'll be a K next to the item on the commissary if it's kosher or not.
So is this like a pre-declaration, like when you're processing in, you have to declare it? There's no switching to kosher.
You can switch. You can switch. You can say you're going kosher, but generally, if you're kosher, you should always be kosher, or you shouldn't suddenly. Some guy, there's so many ridiculous conspiracy theories. Some guys will suddenly become kosher. This is crazy. Some guys will suddenly become kosher because they'll say it's more expensive to feed a kosher prisoner. Therefore, they don't want to feed the prisoner. It's more expensive. So they're going to release the guy earlier. It's just totally absurd. Right. So, but yeah, things like that.
Well, I got 5 questions left for you.
Okay.
I want to get those done. I want to be, and you're being gracious with your time, so I want to respect that. So what was your last day in prison like?
The last day in prison wasn't the jubilation you would expect, because I was really, the anxiety of what would life be like on the other side was hitting me. In prison, you tell your friends and family all these things you're going to do, your expectations, and then the reality sets in like, wow, it's here. Am I going to be successful? Can I make it happen? So I'd love to tell you it was spent partying with my buddies and celebrating. And I just spent a lot of time alone thinking, wow, it's here. Am I ready? Can I fulfill the obligations and promises that I've made? So that last day was filled with a lot of anxiety.
Does it feel a little like your first day on a job that you scammed your way into? Like you're not good enough for it. You're not sure if you can do the job. You promised you'd do well.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, because I had made these promises of what I planned to do. And the question is, was I going to be able to do it? Right. It's like, it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to do it. So there was a lot of anxiety around that.
Well, then what was the next day like? Like, walk me through you processing out. What does that day look like?
The day, that last full day was full of a little bit of anxiety. The last short day, I got picked up at 7 a.m. by my brother and mom. And I actually transitioned to the halfway house in Hollywood, California. I still have 3 months left to serve on my sentence in the halfway house. That's just a totally new environment. You go from prison to a rundown motel in Hollywood, right off Sunset and Sunset Boulevard. And you're just in with all new sorts of prisoners, both state and federal prisoners, male and female. It was crazy at the time because the porn star Janine was serving 6 months there. She was married to Jesse James. So TMZ she served 6 months in prison. She was in that halfway house. TMZ was outside every day. And it was an awful, I wouldn't say awful, it was better than prison. But now I had to get adjusted from prison. Now I was adjusted in the halfway house. And it was an experience, right? Because things that didn't bother staff in prison bothered staff in the halfway house. Like they didn't really care if you didn't do your job in prison. They cared in the halfway house. So it's just an adjustment. It's a quasi freedom. I was in the halfway house for 3 months and things got better once I got my job approved because I was out all day working.
So 3 months in a halfway house. How many people are in the house with you?
Oh, there's like 70, 80 people in there.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a
70,
full
80.
motel.
Oh, yeah. It's a rundown motel. Yeah.
And that's all it's used for is a halfway house.
That's all it is. Yep.
As far as the environment in the halfway house, is it like, are these people, are they also from low security prisons?
Well, that's the thing. So that they're from all over. So in a minimum security camp, you're classified with the minimum security prisoners. Halfway house, fundamentally different. You're in with federal and state, all types of prisoners, violent, sex offenders. My bunkie in the halfway house had just gotten out of prison after serving 40 years for bank robberies. He went out one day, he never came back. I mean, it's very difficult to function after 40 years in custody. So I saw things in the halfway house. I mean, some guys are looking to get caught and go back. I mean, let's be clear about that. They're not ready to function in the real modern world. Okay. So they're coming back late from curfew. They're coming back late. They're drinking, they're smoking, they're failing drug tests. They're having sex. You know, like one dude, we're just standing there and you see him sleeping with this girl. He's having terrible, like right in front of everyone. It's like, you're looking to get caught. You're looking to get sent back to prison. So it's a different experience with a lot of anxiety because people imagine you're in prison for 10 years. You've never really had to work. And then suddenly a case manager is telling you, go to Jamba Juice and get a minimum wage job when you haven't really worked. So it's part of the reason you really want to have a job lined up and nurture relationships in prison to try to soften the landing, so to speak.
So I guess for me, I'm wondering, is it possible to come out the other side, to go from committing that crime, to getting sentenced, to going to prison, coming out the other side better than when you went in?
Well, sure. Look at my business partner, Michael Santos. You should interview him. I mean, he went to prison in 1987 at the age of 23. He got sentenced to 45 years for a nonviolent drug crime. And while in prison, in the penitentiary, he got an undergraduate and a master's degree. He built a huge network. He became a published author. He wrote a famous book called Inside Life Behind Bars in America, top 10 prison book of all time. He served 26 consecutive years in prison. The day that he was released, he began teaching as a professor at San Francisco State on the architecture of incarceration. He now runs a nonprofit that educates and inspires hundreds of thousands of people in federal and state prisons across the country. His goal was to educate himself, to improve his communication skills, and develop a network that had a vested interest in his success. If he can do it through a quarter century in prison, anyone can do it. It just requires work ethic, resolve, discipline, stoicism in our case. Some may embrace religion, but it requires a will to become better and embracing a perspective that some people have it worse. That always helped me. I'd learned. So yeah, there are scores of examples. Halim Flowers, someone who went through our programs in prison, released from prison despite getting sentenced to 2 life sentences. The Queen of England just commissioned a piece of his artwork. Think about that. So anything is possible I don't want to use cliches or platitudes, anything is possible. That sounds too Tony Robbins. What I mean is, if you see the end and you're willing to invest the time on days you think nobody cares, the end is eventually coming. And my dad always used to say that to me. I'd say, like, I don't want to do that. Like, it's too much work. It's going to take too long. And he'd say, well, that date is going to come anyway. So, like, you might as well be ready because it's coming. Because when it comes to that day and you haven't done the work, you're going to regret it. So we know it's coming, you might as well do it. That's kind of a good way to look at a prison term. Like, the end is coming. The majority of people have a release date. You might as well do the work and make it easier on the other side. I learned that from Michael.
Okay. Prison reform. As a law enforcement officer, I have a different perspective. I have an inside perspective of the legal system, but from a different angle than someone who's been in. What are the problems that you see with our legal system, with the sentencing, with the process, with the recidivism? And
well, mass incarceration is a huge problem in this country. It primarily affects people of color, people who are poor, people who have had parents who are in prison, and the cycle continues. In some states, 2/3 of people who are released from prison return. And the part of the problem is the education, the resources that exist in prison. So Prison Professors, a nonprofit that Michael runs, is geared toward creating education for people who are in prison, because to the extent they find value in work and developing new skills and growing their network, it's less likely they reoffend on the other side. It costs a great deal of money to incarcerate people in this country. We spend much more on incarceration than we do education. And it's a continuing cycle of failure. It's a national embarrassment. So we can't fix everything. We're not so engaged in policy, so to speak, but the education. All we can do is our part. Michael uses the analogy of, you can't scoop up the whole ocean. You would never get anywhere, but you can make little dents, right? You can make a little bit of progress. And that's what we're trying to do by way of these programs that we create. And thankfully, we have a great deal of authenticity because Michael did 26 years in prison, so prisoners respect him. So to prison reform, yes, I think we lock up too many people. We believe in the concept of earning freedom, which is prisoners should be able to earn their way home more quickly rather than just letting calendar pages turn. Prisoners should be recorded for education and programming and avoiding problems. They should be treated differently than someone who just watches the Kardashians all day in prison or complains. So I think prison reform is needed. We are seeing some progress in this country, both on the state and federal level, for a number of reasons. But our role is to educate and inspire and try to reduce recidivism, which in turn ensures someone is avoiding criminal lifestyles and not breaking the law. And it also saves resources for taxpayers, which enables our country to redirect those resources to homelessness, to healthcare, to poverty, to addiction, things like that.
And then finally, I got to ask, can we get an update on Jay?
I haven't connected with Jay since I was released from prison.
Is he still in, you think?
No, he's been out. His release date was 2014, and I got out in 2009. So I haven't heard from him. I presume he returned to Hawaii. And maybe if
there's a strong chance that Jay's going to see this.
Yeah, that would be great. I hope he does. I hope he's well and safe. And my mom met him in visitation. He always had a great smile. He did have one visit, and he met my mom. It wasn't anyone from Hawaii that came to see him. It was a friend of his, I think from Nevada, of all places. If Jay watches this, Jay confirm. I think it was one time a visit. A friend of yours came from Nevada, and you met my mom, and it was super cool. It was super cool. I hope he sees it, and it'd be good if he reached
Jay
out.
his full first name?
Actually, if I looked for it, I'd be able to find it because it would actually be in my prison journal behind me. It's in that case. So if I looked for it, I could probably find it, or ask my business partner.
Yeah.
Or
and send me his name if you could, and I will. I'll try to see if I can get him out here. I'd love to talk to him, actually.
I'll try to find him. Yeah, I'll look.
Man, so you have 2 books out?
Several books. We have all the books are free. Nobody has to buy them.
Wow, that's awesome.
So there's a book called Lessons from Prison that I wrote with Michael Santos in prison. kind of a guide, embracing ethics and philosophy, or just a practical way to manage a government investigation. And then a second book is called Ethics in Motion, also free. This is required reading. It's a collection of case studies, white collar crime, fraud. This is used at a number of business schools across the country, including USC, my alma mater. And we have others, all geared towards government and investigations. But if anyone wants a book, happy to send you the PDF at no expense. Just simply go to whitecollaradvice.com or send an email to support@whitecollaradvice.com. The book is free. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I hope you never need our services to prepare for sentencing or prison. Hope you never need to hire us, but you may be fascinated about prison and the way I embrace philosophy and ethics in a real practical way to get me through my journey.
I'm not patronizing.
Yeah.
Why make it free?
Well, look, I'm not a writer like a Stephen King looking to sell novels or anything like that. It feels good to give it away. I didn't write these books with Michael to make money. And there's also a self-interest component, knowing the more I give away, more people may read it, and some people may want to work with our company. So it's not total, it's a win-win, right? But I guess the hard copy I don't give away, so to speak. People could buy that, but the PDF, happy to give away.
What projects are you working on right now?
We have a number of projects in the queue. There's some media projects, which are kind of cool. I had sold my rights a few years ago to Sony and CBS. I'm working on kind of a cool sitcom idea around a guy who goes to prison and begins advising people going to prison. So working on that. Some documentaries in the queue. We had a very favorable New York Times article a couple of weeks ago that rested on the homepage of NewYorkTimes.com for a full day. So that's brought a lot of attention. Working on a couple of documentaries around the work that we do. And no reality TV. I won't do that. I don't want to bring my family into that. And I don't want to exploit clients on TV as they prepare for prison. So I will not do reality TV, despite some nice sums of money that have been thrown my way. And really working to build a business and create better processes with my team, helping people traverse this system, and really focus on the nonprofit as well, and helping get into more prisons and jails across the country, teaching and inspiring. So we're busy. I'm very fortunate. I'm grateful to have this experience to educate and teach, and to have had this platform. I'm grateful for the invitation.
Justin, where can people find you?
So I think whitecollaradvice.com is a good place to start. And while there, we have blogs and videos and podcasts and just tons of free resources if you want to learn more about government investigations. TikTok has been good. I'm having a lot of fun there and filming short videos about prison and ethics and morality. And I kind of, TikTok's fun. Like one will be a serious video about ethics and pressure. The next one is, what are the showers like in prison, right? It's kind of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. YouTube as well, White Collar Advice YouTube channel. So I enjoy teaching and providing valuable content.
We will, of course, leave links in the description to the videos and to all of your social media and all the platforms that you're on. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share your story. I think you're doing big things. I'm glad that we met. If there's anything that you need, just let me know. Anything we can collaborate on. If you ever need a law enforcement perspective, I'll help in any way I can. I love what you're doing. It's fascinating to me. I hope this isn't the last time that we get together, and I hope we can do something in the future. I think my viewers are going to love it.
I hope so. Thank you for the invitation. And I too look forward to staying in touch and doing more work together.
Well, there it is, folks. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Justin Paperny. Thank you to Justin and his team for spending the time with me. I think it was an awesome interview. I think a lot of people can get some good things out of that. If you are interested in seeing more videos like that, go ahead and let me know in the comments. If you got questions for Justin, you can leave those in the comments as well. If you like that video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel so that you know when more videos are coming out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next time, aloha.